All right. Now, with the ongoing war and muddle of varying aims where it's not clear what is the rationale nor the strategy, there are many impacts across the global economy. For this class, we'll consider the impacts on farms, especially those growing high-value crops. Now, if you look at a map, you'll see the Strait of Hormuz is that narrow gap, and circled it there, in the waterway between Mesopotamia and the ocean beyond. If you take other EAS classes, you can learn more about the plate tectonics that have formed that pinch point. Now, the area around Mesopotamia has been important for literally millennia, since that is recorded human history, basically the oldest. But in modern times, it's an important source of a great deal of oil. Again, a lot of fascinating geology there. To just foreclose one common story, oil is not made from ancient dinosaurs, but from rather more recent tiny marine life. But for our purposes, the main issue is there's a lot of oil on one side of the Strait of Hormuz, and most of the world is on the other side of that strait. Those gray sort of speckles on that map represent oil fields underneath the ground. So Iran can plausibly threaten ships that try to sail through. That is causing big problems in the modern globalized economy. With the increase in the price of crude oil, that's gone directly increase the price of fuels such as gasoline. Both of those are commodities. It's very easy for problems in one area of the globe to impact everybody else. This scatter graph shows the price of a barrel of oil on the horizontal axis and the price of a gallon of gasoline in the US on the vertical axis. So each XY point shows the prices on a day from August 1990 to February 2026. Now, just a note on measures, you generally see oil prices listed as dollars per barrel, and a barrel is 42 gallons. A barrel of oil can produce around 19 or 20 gallons of gasoline. There's some complicated chemical engineering going on behind to get that, but we're not going to get into that here. Gasoline prices in the US are dollars per gallon. All this, if you're trying to figure out, okay, what should this relationship be? You're thinking, oh my gosh, metric system would be so nice here, but whatever. That's the world we live in, does not commonly use that in these sorts of things. But so if we were to draw a line to summarize all these points, and there's some nice math that helped do that, that would have a slope of around 0.04. So a $1 increase in the price of a barrel of oil historically is correlated with a 4-cent increase in the price of a gallon of gasoline in the US. For context, with the war, the price of oil has risen to about $30 a barrel. It goes around. Could go further, could be less, depends on the day. But so $30 increase per barrel of oil would imply a $1.20 rise in the price of gasoline. That should help us understand the scale of the issue. Now, you sometimes hear people who point out the U.S. actually produces a lot of oil. I mean, we are the world's largest producer. And very little gasoline sold here in the U.S. was produced from oil in the Middle East. So why do they matter? It matters because crude oil and gasoline are commodities. There's an inward shift in the supply curve. Like I said, these are commodities. For instance, India and China used to get a lot of their fuel from oil from the Middle East. If they can't get oil from there, they'll buy it from elsewhere, maybe from African producers. Europe used to get a lot of oil from African producers who are now selling more to India and China, so the Europeans have to buy more from the Americas, and so on. All the world's markets for oil are integrated. So it's reasonable to view it as just one big market. A reduction in the global supply of oil means a shift inward of the supply curve, which raises the price for everybody. A commodity market is great when everybody pays a lower price because of the integrated markets, but then other times everybody has to pay a higher price. Now, what does this mean for farmers? There are several paths. Restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz mean fertilizer is more expensive, fuel, especially diesel, is more expensive, and pesticides are more expensive. Now, the biggest impact for farmers, particularly in the northern hemisphere where the planting season is starting, is fertilizer. Maybe a surprise, but fertilizer is commonly made from fossil fuels. Now, in this class, in a few weeks, Angela will talk about the principal components of fertilizer N, P, and K: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Yep, K is for potassium. Long story. It reflects the importance of Arabic scientists from long ago, but whatever, that's what we got. That's the letter that we use. The first of these, nitrogen, is commonly delivered as ammonia and urea. Ammonia is made from natural gas through the Haber-Bosch process. It takes the nitrogen from the air all around us. Nitrogen is the major part of the air that we breathe. The Middle East has a lot of natural gas, as well as oil, and generally it's been found to be easier and cheaper to export nitrogen-based fertilizer than to export natural gas, which has to be cooled down to a liquid. I mean, that is done, but it's just a little tougher. So the N parts of the fertilizer are going to be most impacted by closure of the Strait of Hormuz, again, because it's a global commodity. The P and K parts are also made with significant energy inputs. I mean, moving tons of rock takes a lot of fuel, and so those are going to be impacted as well. Also, the Gulf produces a significant amount of the K in the global market, which, again, restricted from going through the strait. So farms see all their fertilizer prices rise. Farms also use plenty of fuel, often diesel fuel, for their machinery. Plowing and digging holes are tough jobs that can be significantly helped with an engine. Side note, farms use what's called red diesel, which is taxed less than the sort used for trucks and on-road vehicles. It's dyed red to make it easy to catch if it's used for road vehicles to evade taxes. There's also blue diesel for military use. It's all an example of how many governments offer such a wide array of tax breaks for farmers. Now, beyond farms, of course, the transportation from farm to table also takes fuel, so that's going to raise prices for consumers. And finally, pesticides are becoming more expensive because globalized production depends on fuel for shipping inputs around the globe, and like I said, all that fuel is becoming more expensive. So, the increasing prices for farmers that farmers must pay, oh crap, I didn't change that. So that's supply and demand for farm products, not for oil, should be the title. I apologize. The increasing prices that farmers pay means the supply curve for most farm products is going to shift inwards. That means higher prices and lower production. Now that might sound a bit surprising. Why are farmers hurt if the prices of their output ends up increasing? That's because their costs have also risen, usually even more than prices. A supply shock means costs rise and prices rise, and that's bad. A shift in demand, on the other hand, could raise the price that farmers get by more than their costs rise, and that'd be good news. But a supply shock is generally bad for many farmers. Not for all farmers, of course. Farms that were right on the edge get pushed out of business. The remaining farms might actually prosper in the longer term, although from other farmers being pushed out of business. And note that especially for the high-value crops we've been talking about, which are not usually necessities but luxuries, the previous assumption of stable demand is not probably going to be true. I mean, in addition to the supply curve shifting inward, the demand curve is also likely to shift inward. People spend more money on fuel and less money on nice things. That might end up putting even more farmers out of business, since their revenue prices might not even rise, even though their costs rise. And, especially for crops like coffee and chocolate, the farmers are some of the poorer people in the world. They're taking a really big hit from decisions made very far away.